Today's message is Exodus chapter 5, and it's verses 19 to 23. You'll see here from the Bible. This is the context. Exodus 5, at the start, Moses goes to Pharaoh and tells him exactly as God has said to him in Exodus chapter 3, that he is to let God's people go. They don't belong to Pharaoh, they're God's people. But then, of course, Pharaoh says no, and then, of course, in reaction to that, he removes the straw from the daily quota that the Israelites had to build. And we're breaking here in verse 19, and the officers of the children of Israel saw they were in trouble after it was said, "You shall not reduce any bricks from your daily quota." Pharaoh removed the straw and asked them to keep up the daily quota, an impossible task. Then as they came out from Pharaoh, they met Moses and Aaron, who stood there to meet them. And they said to them, and we can sense the frustration on the people. Remember, they had been in slavery for a long period of time. "Let the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us abhorrent in the sight of Pharaoh and the sight of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to kill us." The extra suffering highlighted and made them more frustrated with Moses than they already were with the initial slavery. Verse 22, so Moses returned to the Lord, and this is always where we must go with our frustrations. And we sense the frustration in Moses' statements. "Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why is it you have sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. Neither have you delivered your people at all." And so we sense the frustration building both for Moses and from the people. But here in this passage, we learn that obedience brings opposition. Moses, following God's lead, found himself in deeper trouble, and the Israelites, the very people he was trying to deliver, but he obeyed God's call to confront Pharaoh and demanded freedom. But of course, Pharaoh increased the suffering. And we sense the weight of disappointment in verses 19 to 21. "You shall not reduce any bricks from your daily quota," was exactly what was told to the Israelites. And of course, they responded in this by saying to Moses, "You have made us abhorrent in the sight of Pharaoh." The Israelite officers were crushed, their burdens had increased, and they blamed Moses and Aaron for making things worse. This is a painful moment when the very people Moses was trying to help turned against him. Sometimes obedience to God leads to misunderstanding, even from those we are trying to serve. Secondly, we see honest questions in the presence of God from Moses. Moses brings his frustration to God. Moses doesn't hide his frustration. He brings his raw emotions to God, asking why things have gone so wrong. This is a powerful reminder that God welcomes our honesty, particularly in prayer. And he doesn't rebuke Moses for asking hard questions, but he listens to his frustrations. And maybe that will then encourage me and you to bring our frustrations to God. And of course, this is not uncommon, this theme of obedience bringing opposition. Joseph, Genesis 37 to 50, who's devoted, more space is devoted to Joseph than any other character in the book of Genesis. He was faithful, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. Like Moses, his obedience seemed to lead him into suffering. But of course, when he looked back at the end of his life, Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." You remember Jeremiah? Jeremiah preached God's word faithfully. He was mocked and beaten, and he cried out, "O Lord, you've induced me, and I was persuaded everyone mocks me." Like Moses, Jeremiah felt abandoned in his calling, but he couldn't stop speaking God's word. And if you run into the New Testament, Paul, 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 to 28, Paul endured beatings, shipwrecks, imprisonment for preaching the gospel, but he didn't measure success by ease or popularity, but by faithfulness. Like Moses, he pressed on despite opposition, trusting God's greater plan. And the last point is God's silence isn't absence. Though God doesn't answer, Moses immediately in Exodus chapter 5, the next chapter begins in hope. Exodus 6 verse 1, now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. God was not ignoring Moses, he was preparing to act. And sometimes the silence of God is the setup for his greatest work. And so application, are you facing resistance after stepping out in faith? You can see the biblical pattern as this is the general pattern. You only have to read the books of Ezra, Nehemiah, the life of Jesus, the life of Paul, and you can see whenever there was a stepping out in faith, there was opposition. Secondly, do you feel like your obedience has only made things harder? And often that is what it seems on the surface. And then thirdly, are you wondering where God is in the middle of your struggle? And so the good news is you're in good company. Moses, Joseph, Jeremiah, and Paul are all part of a long line of faithful people who wrestle with God in the waiting. And like them, we can trust that God is not finished. And so let's remember, obedience will bring opposition, but it also should lead us to have a greater trust in God's plan. Thank you for listening.